Peter Adams again, and in video 2 I talked to you about how ALP is structured, how the model works with students. In this video number 3, I'd like to present some data, some results, on what the effect has been on student success in ALP as compared to our traditional model here at CCBC. So let's take a look. On this chart, on the top half of the screen, we're going to show you the data for students who took our traditional version of developmental writing, starting in the fall of 2007 and through fall and spring of each year through fall of 2010. In the bottom half of the chart, the same data for students who followed the ALP route. The numbers in the bottom half are going to be much smaller. We started off with just a handful of sections, 5 sections each semester, and then gradually grew the program, as I'll show you a little later on. I also want to give credit to Sungwoo Cho and his colleagues, Kopko and Jenkins, at the Community College Research Center in New York. They conducted the study that produced this data, and if you are interested in looking at the full study, all you have to do is Google CCRC, the Community College Research Center, and you will find this study and lots of other fascinating studies of all kinds of issues associated with community colleges today on the CCRC website. So, thanks to CCRC for the data. Now let's take a look at it. We'll start with the top half of the chart. In those 4 years, 5,545 students took our traditional developmental course. And of those, 65% passed. During the same 4 years, ALP students, 592 took ALP, and of those, 485 or 82% passed. So you can see we've got about a 17 percentage point jump in the pass rate for the developmental course. We were really happy to see that. Now the next step in this pipeline diagram is this one. Remember back in video number 1, we showed you that in 2003, when we did the study of students from 1988, no, it was 1993, not 2003, and we did a 4-year longitudinal study of students from the academic year 1987-88, that 16% actually passed the developmental course and never even attempted to take English 101. And you can see here the percentage is no better in 2010. That, in fact, it's a little bit worse, 17%. 943 students out of the original 5,000 and so actually passed the developmental course and gave up at that point. Now, these students were followed for just 3 years, not 4 years, the way we did it in 1993. So we had 1 year more to follow them. But nevertheless, that problem continues to persist. Now, we wouldn't have gone to all the trouble of making this videotape if we couldn't improve on that 17%, and improve we did. I'm tempted to ask you, how much of an improvement would you be impressed by? What if we got that 17% down to 10%? How about 5%? How about 0%? Because that's what we got. Now, before you throw up your hands in disbelief, let me point out that this has nothing to do with our teaching skills on the faculty here at CCBC. We could be lousy teachers and we would still have gotten it down to 0% because it's in the model that we used. Remember that what we're asking is how many students passed the developmental course and never even attempted English 101. Well, of course it's going to be 0 in ALP because they attempt English 101 when they register for ALP. There's no way they can avoid 101. They take it at the same time. So it's a trick in the model that gets us another 17% bump in our success rates. So in effect, remember we talked about the pipeline that they have to move through? Well, we've shortened the pipeline by one exit point. There's one place they can't drop out because they have to register for both classes and they have to stay in both classes. If they drop one, they have to drop the other one. All right, but what we're really interested in is the bottom line. How do they do when they took 101, not how many took it? So let's take a look at that. And what you'll find is that the pass rate for the traditional program remains stubbornly at about 1/3. 33% of the students actually who started out in English 052 ever pass English 101, and it's 74% for ALP students. If we double the pass rate, it would be 66%. So it's actually 8 percentage points more than doubling the pass rate. The first year we saw these data, when we were producing them internally in our institutional research office here at the school, they were so good we didn't believe they were right. We said we must have made some mistake, but they've held up semester after semester, and now they've been certified by CCRC, and that who are a lot better at doing this kind of research than we are. So then you might be wondering, well, maybe the trick is that Peter talked about all that bonding and the small group dynamics, and you have them for 6 hours a week, half that time in a very small section. Maybe those faculty members become so close to those students that they cut them some slack and pass them in English 101 when they shouldn't pass, when they're not really ready to move on to English 102. And so we needed to find some way to see how do they do when they get to 102. And that's what I'd like to show you next. But as you can see, there's no more room on the screen for English 102. So would you just trust me on this one? Well, in case you won't, we can move everything over to the left, and I'll show you 102 on the right. Now remember, 102 is not required in about half of our certificate programs. So the numbers are going to be a lot smaller, a lot smaller. Only 13% of the traditional cohort ever took English 102. 50% of the ALP cohort did. And what was the pass rate? 10% of the traditional students ever pass 102, and 33% of the ALP students do. So again, we've tripled the pass rate over traditional students, and we think that that would not have happened if that problem I was talking about of the faculty cutting their students too much slack in ALP, if that was going on, then we wouldn't have these kinds of improved success rates in English 102. We've begun to get some longitudinal data now because we started very small with just a handful of sections in the early years, and because you have to wait a year or two before students begin to accumulate any credits. We're just now beginning to get these kinds of data. So what I want to show you on this chart is how many college credits students have earned after 1 year after they were in after ALP or traditional 052. In these charts, green will represent traditional students and purple ALP. So 1 year after being in the developmental course, 39% of the traditional students have still earned no college credits, and only 25% of the ALP students have earned no college credits. What percentage had earned 1 to 5 credits? 33% for the traditional students, 30% for the ALP students. How about 6 to 11 college credits? And now the ALP students begin to surge ahead. I feel like I'm an radio announcer calling a horse race here. 20% of the ALP students have accumulated between 6 and 11 credits versus 18 for ALP. And now the really larger numbers, 12 to 17 credits, it's more than double, 14% of the ALP students versus 6%. And not too many students have accumulated 8 to 23, but it's still much higher, 8.4% versus 2.9% for traditional students. So we've got some longitudinal data there showing the effect of ALP on student success more broadly than just in writing courses. We also are beginning, and just at the very beginning of getting some data on completion rates. We're defining completion as receiving an AA or a certificate. We do not have transfer data yet in these figures. So for the cohort who took ALP in the fall of 2007, 14% of the traditional students have completed an AA or a certificate, and 26% of the ALP students have. So we've not quite, but almost doubled our completion rate. The numbers are much smaller for later semesters. Fall of 2008, 7% versus 9%, and fall of 2009, 3% versus 5%. But as the years roll on, we'll get more and more data. But it's looking very much like we're something pretty close to doubling the completion rate for students who go through ALP. And now, this was probably the most startling data we've seen yet about ALP. Remember back in the last video, I talked about the fact that lots of people have asserted that ALP is only good for students close to the cutoff score for 101. We wanted to see just how true that was. So we used the AccuPlacer, and for students who scored in the highest 10 points, 80 to 89, we found that the students from the traditional, 31% of students from the traditional developmental course passed English 101, whereas 77% of the ALP students did. So we improved for that band of students, the ones who scored close to the cutoff, we improved their success rate by 46% as compared to traditional students. For students in the middle band, between 70 and 79 on the AccuPlacer, it was 25% versus 69%, or an improvement of 44%. And for students in the lowest 10 scores on the AccuPlacer, between 60 and 69, 23% of the traditional students were successful in 101, and 77% of the ALP students, for a total improvement of 54%. In other words, ALP has a stronger positive effect on the lowest AccuPlacer scoring students when we divide them into three parts like this. And that really surprised us and really pleased us. So I think these data show that ALP actually has a more dramatic effect on the students who are farther away from the cutoff, rather than it improves everybody's scores, but it improves the lower performing students the most. I wanted to talk for just a few minutes about scaling up, because it's really important. If we really want to improve the success rate of developmental students in large numbers, then we can't just do it with a handful of sections. We started with a handful. In 2007, 2008, we offered 10 sections of ALP. We had only 8 students in a section, so we had 80 students. The next year we doubled in size, 20 sections, 160 students. And each year after that, we doubled in size through 2011, 2012. This last year, we were over 200 sections. And this year, we're up around 240 sections. We're no longer doubling in size. And I want to be truthful about this. Scaling up is hard to do. Isn't that an old country and western song? Oh, no, that was breaking up. But scaling up is also hard to do. We've run into all kinds of issues with finding enough qualified faculty to teach the course, doing faculty development for enough faculty, finding enough classroom space, because especially with big enrollment growth in recent years, it's very hard to justify having 10 students meeting in a classroom that can hold 30 students if you don't, if your classroom space is at a premium. So we've had to work very hard on the scaling up problem, and it's slowed down somewhat in recent years. But nevertheless, we're very proud of the fact that we're now scaled up to over 200 sections each year. And we've also scaled up in a different way. We've scaled up nationally. This map and these little red dots on this map, each dot represents a school that has at least piloted some sections of ALP. Now, I want to hasten to add that I haven't visited all of these schools. I've visited lots of them. And I can tell you that as far as I know, not a single one of these schools is doing ALP exactly the way we do it at CCBC. And we think that's one of the wonderful things about the model, is that it is malleable. You can take what you've heard me say about ALP, pick what seems to be feasible in your situation because of budgetary reasons, faculty histories, the kinds of students you have, other legal or policy constraints at your school, and you can tailor ALP to work in your environment. And frankly, I hope in some cases people will find ways of doing ALP that are better than the way we do it. And if you do, I hope you'll let us know about it. We want to continue to grow the program and make it better and better. But we've now got 160 schools around the country that we're aware of that are doing ALP. And in these 6 states, Colorado, Arkansas, Indiana, Michigan, Virginia, and Connecticut, there are large-scale adoptions going on. Not necessarily full-scale, but large-scale adoptions going on in those states. So ALP is growing. It's really important. It's really important for the success of developmental writing, but also it's what's really important about it is for the success of our students. So this is the end of video number 3. Excuse me. The last video is on the costs of ALP, and let me just give you a little preview. It appears to be exorbitantly expensive because the class size of just 10 is a very small class size. Let me promise you that the next video will show that, in fact, I'm going to take a break before the next video and go take a cough drop. In fact, ALP is less expensive per successful student than the traditional approach with its larger class sizes. So I hope you'll watch video number 4.